flag. So don't stop that applause. Here we are connecting live, direct, via live stream. Or as they used to say, via satellite. Thank you. To those marvelous countries, thank you. May God bless you, may He protect you. We're here at River Arena on Broadway Street, the Revival on Broadway Street. This place where marvelous things are always happening. And I'm going to transmit what I believe God told me to tell you in just a few minutes, but before I have something to share with you. We've already sang here live, we've worshipped. A few things have happened here, but that has to do with the experience of those that are here present in the flesh. Now we connect with all the people around the world that are watching us from their homes. Thank you for being there. Welcome to you. I just came back yesterday from South America. This tour that we've taken to 40 different countries already. We still have to go to Bolivia in a couple weeks, Paraguay, Panama, Spain. But this past week we went to Peru with our beloved people from Lima, and we have images from Peru. It was marvelous. This is a dome. As you might see, it's a tent or a dome, literally on the beach of Lima. It was marvelous to be there. It was completely sold out. It was full. And it was marvelous to get to know this Peruvian crowd. Well, I had already met the Peruvians years ago. I've been in many different cities in Peru, but this time I went back to Lima with this marvelous conference, and I promised to all the people from Lima that I would show these images and send greetings to them. This was Tuesday night at about 9 p.m. That's when the conference began, and it was marvelous, everything that we lived in Peru. And if there are any Peruvians here, let me say, your food, your gastronomy is amazing. You eat so well in Peru. I do intermittent fasting, and I only eat during 8 hours of the day. For 16 hours I'm fasting. So I eat from noon until 8 p.m. But since there's such good food in Peru, I had to adjust that time window a little bit. And it was marvelous, and since an image is worth more than 1,000 words, this is what happened in Lima, Peru.
Una experiencia única, un sueño hecho realidad.
Fue una maravilla ver a Dante Gebel en vivo.
Dante, que tiene tanto tiempo.
Espectacular, un evento espectacular.
Ha sido reconfortante escuchar sus palabras.
Realmente excelente, nadie se lo puede perder.
Alegre, ha sido una súper conferencia, me llevó muchas enseñanzas y ha sido un cambio en nuestra vida. Gracias Dante Gebel, gracias River Arena.
El evento ha estado precioso y quiero confesarles que es una oración contestada.
Presidente, fue lo mejor que me ha podido pasar en mi vida, lo recomiendo al 100%.
Yo siento que he marcado un antes y un después para mi vida porque me ha hecho reconocer el verdadero propósito para que nací.
Esta experiencia ha sido para poder concientizar y valorar a la familia.
Definitivamente a mi edad, que tengo 19 años, fue de mucha bendición realmente.
Te rompe los moldes que muchas veces tenemos de religiosidad.
Es una experiencia inolvidable, realmente única, llega al corazón de cada persona.
Es una increíble experiencia, realmente lo recomiendo.
Presidente, es una experiencia extraordinaria, recomendada.
To all the Peruvians. To all the Peruvians, an enormous greeting. That was Tuesday. That was Tuesday night. The following day, first thing in the morning, we transported to Chile. Because Thursday, we were at the Movistar Arena in Chile. Chile is a marvelous country. There in the south. A mountain range separates Chile from the Holy Land, Argentina. They're almost holy. This is the Movistar Arena in Chile. A marvelous place. This went on Thursday, where we had an absolute sellout as well. Sold out, more than 10,000 people. They all bought their tickets almost a week in advance. We couldn't fit another soul, and I encountered many friends. This is the third Movistar Arena we've gone to. The first one was in Bogotá, the second was in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and this third one is in Chile. It's always marvelous to be in these arenas where so many marvelous people congregate. We had such a great time, and I don't know if there's any Chileans here. Are there any Chileans? Chile is so beautiful. I didn't talk about soccer in Chile. I didn't want to say anything to not hurt their feelings. I was a visitor. I behaved. I didn't say anything. Generally, I tend to ask, did Chile go to the World Cup? And I say these jokes, but this time I didn't say anything. I was a minority. I want to go back someday. This is what happened in Chile.
Bienvenidos a...
Regalo del Día de la Madre desde Concepción.
Maravilloso, impactante. Vamos con el corazón llenito. Tremendo.
Un tour maravilloso, una experiencia que tiene que vivir porque de verdad que es un hombre excepcional.
Nos lleva a reflexionar nuestra vida y a replantearnos, a vivir. El show es impecable, así que lo recomiendo.
Lo esperábamos desde el año pasado, esperábamos que llegara Dante.
De verdad, así.
Una emoción, recorrí toda mi vida.
Sí.
Sé que lloré, me reí.
Compramos la entrada, pero al tiro cuando salió y maravilloso Dante.
Sí. Una experiencia inolvidable. Vengo especialmente de Viña a verlo. Muy lindo todo y lo hemos seguido siempre.
De verdad una experiencia fenomenal, inolvidable.
Y yo sé que todas las personas que estaban acá se fueron pero con su corazón llenito. Bendiciones, me voy bendecida, contenta y con un sueño cumplido junto con mi hijo. Así que gracias, Dante. Si crees que Dios te habló, sí, fue directo al corazón. Muchas gracias por el momento vivido.
Lo pasamos increíble, nos reímos toda la noche y esperamos ver a Dante nuevamente acá en Chile. Y fue muy divertido y fue una noche, yo creo, sensacional para vivir una serie de emociones. Así que a todos los que están escuchando, los invito a que puedan venir al tour de Dante.
Yo voto Dante.
I vote for Dante. See, she's a Chilean that would vote for me. Greetings to all of Chile. And I'll see you in Bolivia, Panama, Paraguay. We have 2 dates in Barcelona, Madrid, Sevilla, Coruña, Alicante, and then we come back to Panama. It's always a pleasure. And I'll always share with you how it went, how God's favor is with us, how He backs us. I know I can count on your prayers, especially for our health, for the plane rides, for the food, because I always have to be back here on Sunday with a fresh message on behalf of the Lord. So may the Lord always renew my strength. I count on your prayers. And don't ever let that backing stop from our family, from my family here. All right, I'm about to transmit the message, but I want to tell you that yesterday, Saturday, we had plans to go and pick, no, not pick. We weren't going to pick anything. We were going to go bless those that picked the strawberries in the strawberry fields. We were going to bless them with food and many things, but finally, the people in charge of these fields decided that they wouldn't harvest on Saturday. So we were left with all the food, all the resources, and immediately our pastoral team had the idea of saying, why don't we go here to Los Angeles, where there are so many people living on the streets. The area of Skid Row has many people living on the streets, about 20,000 people living on the streets. 20,000 people that are permanently living without a roof. And the city of Los Angeles is the city with the most homeless people in all of the U.S. I share this with people in other countries that say, no, everyone in the U.S. is rich, no one has problems with money. No, there's a huge situation in Los Angeles with people that don't have anything to eat. So yesterday we went out. Here we have the first images of what yesterday's event was, a very cloudy day, very cold, of course. But our team took the tents, they went out to bless. And obviously, they received the joy and the surprise. Many already know us. They were waiting for us. And they said, oh, you're the people from River. So we took warm food, many warm meals. It was marvelous to see that whole blue sea. Yesterday when I received the images, I was just getting back from my trip to Chile. And I saw images immediately of what was happening. And I felt my chest inflate because I said, this is so marvelous. I know how tough it is to have volunteers in any congregation go out to the streets, but here they do it with so much love, so much affection. Look at this blue sea. This applause goes to all you people. Look at this. Look at this team. This team of volunteers. Now, it's surprising. What's more is we didn't have enough shirts. There were more volunteers than food. Then there was food. This is our team. I think this is church. Undoubtedly, more than just a slogan or a cliche. This is church. Because going out to the streets, this was the preparation before we headed out. We all said, we're going to be a channel of blessing. I don't know if you can accomplish that anywhere in the world. And God knows that I'm not boasting. We're not boasting. But that doesn't mean that we can't be grateful, because we have all ages represented here. Youth, so many youth. Children that put on their shirts and they have this contact with those that have less. So when they have contact with those that have less, they become more grateful with what they do have. I think many of those that went came back no longer complaining about foolishness, knowing how marvelous it is to serve and be a channel of blessing. So to all the volunteers, we have images and videos being prepared for next week, but I just wanted to present these fresh images, photographs of what happened yesterday with our volunteers. Thank you, church, for your generosity, for those that gave money for the food, and for those that went to give a bit of their labor. And now, I always show you Africa, India. Today, this evening, our team is headed out to Cuba, because we're going to be giving away our homes in the neighborhood that we just finished, River Home. We're going to give these homes away this week to the elderly couples that could never even dream of it. When we see the images, we're all going to cry together here. This week we're giving the houses away. Remember, we had some problems. We didn't know if we were going to be able to finish the project, but we did in the end. And now River has built a whole neighborhood with the newest generation of houses in Cuba, with everything, with running water, with electricity. And we chose 6 elderly couples that live in inhumane conditions at the moment, and we're going to give them these homes. That'll be done this week. Today, the pastors, a group of pastors from here, as well as volunteers, will leave to Havana, Cuba, and we're going to be praying for them. Meanwhile, we went to Colombia. More than 150 volunteers. I think there are more Colombians here. Poor Chileans, there aren't many of them here. There are a few Chileans and Argentinians, but there are many, many Colombians. 150 volunteers from the church Dante Gebel, with the beloved priest that helped us out, carried this out. We made it to New Jerusalem, a sector in Colombia, and this was the biggest invasion that has ever happened in this zone. People living in poverty, many of them migrants displaced because of violence. But we were able to give 20 tons of food. We were able to help the entire community with medical attention, dental attention, haircuts, all that. After this, I'll share the message, but this is what happened in Colombia thanks to your seed.
Estamos en Torreón, en la parte más alta de la invasión Nueva Jerusalén, la segunda invasión más grande de Colombia. Hemos venido a traer de la canasta familiar lo más importante, porque sabemos que muchas familias se acuestan día tras día sin ni siquiera probar un alimento al día.
En una comunidad tan grande de 30.000 habitantes, unas 9.000 unidades familiares viven del día a día, literalmente viven del día a día. Muchas personas trabajan en la calle vendiendo dulces, vendiendo paquetes de comidas, auxiliares de cocina en algún restaurante. Es realmente, digamos, toda la situación del rebusque. En ese tema de la alimentación, pues realmente uno encuentra que hay mucha desnutrición. Porque la cultura de la gente va siendo, bueno, yo desde que tenga arroz, aguapanela y arepa, ya con eso paso el día. Entonces, al tener el mismo poder adquisitivo, pero encarecer los precios de los alimentos, pues realmente lo que le hace la gente es dejar de comer y comer algo más económico y sobre todo que llene, ¿no? Porque lo que se busca es la sensación de llenar, no de nutrirse, ¿no?
¿Alguna vez te ha tocado acostarte sin comer?
Ay, pues que te digo sinceramente que es que a uno le da como hasta pena decir, pero es verdad. A mí me da pena decir, pero es verdad.
¿Te has acostado sin comer?
Uno busca. Uno no se deja morir, de verdad que no. Cuando yo tengo pues la capacidad para comer, sí me como mi buena carnita, mis frijolitos, o sea, una comida digna para una persona.
¿Pero cada cuánto es eso?
Ay, muchacho. Yo creo que eso hasta se puede contar para una vez al mes, si acaso. Si acaso.
Y el resto, por ejemplo, hoy.
No tengo nada. Hoy no tengo nada para comer. La verdad.
Hay veces sí nos hemos quedado sin comer hasta una semana.
¿Una semana?
Sí, o sea, si desayunamos no hay para el almuerzo o así. O con una comida en el día. Porque a él pues el trabajo que le resulta es de vez en cuando hacer algún arreglo. Entonces uno pagando arriendo, entonces no daba como para la comida, si sea un arrocito, bueno, comíamos pues así una vez en el día, pero sí es muy duro.
Hasta aquí con un sinnúmero de dificultades, el terreno, los carros, pero llegamos hasta aquí. Muy poca gente ha llegado hasta ese sector a hacer esta gran obra de amor y en beneficio de la comunidad. Una de las mayores preguntas es ¿qué pasa con los niños? Por eso River ha venido hasta esta comunidad para traerles a estos pequeños dotación deportiva completa, camisetas deportivas, pantalonetas, medias, guayos y balones. Estamos súper contentos porque estamos bendiciendo a la gente que realmente lo necesita y estamos siendo de bendición para niños, madres cabezas de hogar y adultos mayores.
Dios los bendiga. Dios se los pague de todo corazón. Hoy Dios mío le pague, sinceramente, guau.
Tiene dulcecitos, rosquillas, yogures.
Para que se den unos gusticos.
Ay, pero qué gusto.
Gracias, River, por ese mercado. Bendecida.
Una bendición, porque no todos en este momento tenemos para tenerlo.
Gracias, River, por hacer esto posible.
That is your seed. That is our seed. It's marvelous. An enormous greeting to all of Colombia. And we never stop doing this. And it's very, very marvelous, very magnificent, because it doesn't have to do with opening up a new church or building a temple, but helping those that need it the most. And that's our way of expanding as a river. And that's what we promised the Lord during the pandemic, that we would never stop being the barn house of the world. So we do it. We never stop. Even when you're not seeing these images, always, always. And this very moment, we're doing something in Mexico, in Colombia, in Honduras, and we show it little by little when we have time to do so. But we never stop, so thank you for your seed, for what you've planted, and those that sow from different parts of the world. Are we ready for God to speak to us? Yes or no? I'd like to begin with a very direct question, very honest question. When was the last time that someone looked us deeply in the eyes and asked us, "How are you? Are you good?" And I include myself, right? When was the last time that somebody asked us, "How are you? Are you fine?" I'm not talking about someone you know casually that just asked us out of courtesy and didn't even wait for an answer. Sometimes it's a cliche. "Hey, how you doing?" And you don't even wait for the answer. I'm referring to someone that's truly interested in knowing how the health of our soul is doing. Someone that can perceive our battles, our fights that we don't necessarily express, and that are interested enough to not just be left with the superficial. And under no point of view are they willing to conform to our classic answer of, I'm good, thank God, I can't complain. It's not very frequent, let's agree, that someone truly wants to know how we are and they ask us, "How are you? How do you feel?" No, but really, how do you feel? And despite the fact that this question is very healing when somebody truly asks it, intentionally and consciously, it's very healing. As soon as we perceive that somebody is trying to probe a little deeper, we tend to close ourselves. We establish our layers, and we avoid opening our souls because vulnerability is always intimidating. And you might think, if I open myself up, maybe this will be used against me. Maybe I'll tell them what's going on with me, and then they're going to spread that gossip. And so you tend to close yourself and not share. However, you give a short answer instead of giving a spiritual answer. You say, I'm good, I'm blessed, I can't complain. You're asking how I am? Yeah, I'm good. Thank God I have a job, I'm healthy, I serve God. And my family, well, every family has problems, nothing out of the ordinary. Generally speaking, I'm fine, I can't complain. It's a very vain response. And we always have the tendency to enumerate external indicators to prove that we're fine. But none of these things, not even our employment, not our health, not even serving God or our family, means, necessarily speaking, that we're healthy, that we're happy inside. That's why the question is, are you fine? It's terrifying because it has to do with our true self, not with our activities or what we're doing, but with the health of our soul. Are you good? How are you feeling? The majority of Christians, it's tough for us to speak about that internal health, our emotional stability, because it's as if it exposes us, I insist. Basically, it shows us to be very vulnerable, very earthly, very human. And so us Christians say, in victory, thank God, I'm not going to give the devil the time of day. And we never truly open up our hearts. Sometimes we're not okay. The health of our soul isn't fine, and today's message is the result of the fact that I've battled with these questions that we all ask ourselves. How are we really doing? As the years go by and as the seasons change, you have moments in which you're good, and then you have moments in which your soul isn't so good. I'm not pretending under any point of view that I'm an expert in internal wellness. I don't have even the slightest motivation to tell you how to fix a broken soul. In fact, when it has to do with the human soul, I don't think any of us could affirm having everything resolved. Not preachers, not even the most spiritual person, because the soul is complex. The human heart is complex. More than 2,500 years ago, the prophet Jeremiah gives the ancient people of Israel this word in Jeremiah 17:9. The human heart is the most deceitful of all things, and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is? Talking about our heart. Our heart deceives us. This isn't a very encouraging message, of course, but Jeremiah wasn't being cynical or ironic. He was being honest. He was declaring the human condition. Our heart is deceitful. Sometimes it scams us. However, the message from God in Jeremiah doesn't stop there, because the following verse says, "But I, the Lord, search all hearts and examine secret motives." So in other words, God does know the depths of our mind, the depths of our hearts, our soul. In fact, He knows us better than what we know ourselves. But the majority of us can't even explain what God is referring to when He says the soul, the heart. What's more is sometimes we interpret it as poetic license. Like poets tend to say, "I love you with all my heart, my soul is undone by you." And we think that maybe God is using that same poetic license. I was reading a study where they found that the majority of Christians, in other words, us, when we think about the soul, we believe or subscribe to the theory of the Looney Tunes. In our subconscious, we assume that when we die, we're going to go through what the duck went through. That when dynamite exploded on him, there was a translucent figure that came from their body because Bugs Bunny blew him up. So you believe that that's what's going to happen to you, that something is going to float out of you like a ghost, a shadow. Something is going to fly up to heaven. What's true is that you can't put a soul under a microscope. You can't study it with x-rays. There are no x-rays that can see a soul. I once told you that about 100 years ago, a doctor began to measure the slight weight loss from 6 tuberculosis patients as they passed, and he concluded that when they died, they lost a weight of 21 grams. And so he concluded that the soul weighs 21 grams. Then it was disproven by science, but it went so viral that dozens of books were written about the weight of a soul. Even a film became very famous called 21 Grams, where it was believed that a soul weighs 21 grams. But that's not what matters. Don't start weighing yourself now. Don't say, "Oh, I'm not fat, it's just I have a heavy soul." No, it's not that. But when we speak about the soul, even unbelievers mention it with respect. You might have seen in films, we might have seen that when the worst criminal is about to be executed, they're told, "May God have pity on your soul." Like a soul is a jurisdiction that doesn't belong to any judge here on earth. They can be condemned to the electric chair or the maximum sentence or lethal injection, but then the matters of the soul, well, may God have pity on you. We don't necessarily want them to go to hell, but we say to the worst criminals, "May God have pity on your soul." In fact, the universal sign of danger, SOS, means save our souls. Save our souls. Us churches should know a lot about souls. We're always talking about souls and saving souls. But what does it mean for a soul to be saved? The word soul in the Old Testament as well as the New Testament is always synonymous with a person. In fact, even our own vocabulary reflects this. When you count the people on a ship or a plane, they ask, how many souls aboard? When there's an air tragedy, they ask, how many people were on board? It is believed that the origin of this question, or of relating people directly with their souls, it comes from biblical language. That's where it was born. Maybe it finds its origin in Acts 27:37, where Luke informs about a shipwreck where the Apostle Paul was involved. And he says, all 276 of us who were on board, 276 souls. Maybe that's where the phraseology or the etymology of the word surges, that when you speak about a group of people, you speak about a group of souls. Let me tell you other interesting details. The word psychology, which is so famous, comes from the Greek word psyche, which in reality means soul. Psychology is the study of the soul. Sigmund Freud wrote that the treatment of the psyche is nothing more than the treatment of the soul. But as the years have gone by, psychology changed the term soul for the internal you. And they're not equivalent. They're almost on the antipodes. They have different connotations. The American Medical Association affirms that despite the huge growth of the mental health industry, because years ago there weren't so many professionals dedicated to mental health, but despite the huge increase of professionals that study mental health, there are more and more people that are depressed, suffering depression, contemplating suicide almost with affection. And we can't explain why there are more and more people that are unhappy, bitter, depressed, hurt. In actuality, we have technology that our grandparents never dreamt of having. We can travel by plane in a matter of hours when before they had to spend months on a ship just to get across the ocean. However, now people are more depressed, more sad. A brilliant psychologist named Martin Seligman, who has no religious interest, he never pronounced himself as a Christian. He exposed the theory that people replaced God with that small thing that new psychology calls the inner you. And that inner me can't sustain the weight of life. Without God, you can't. But all that about discovering yourself, that empowerment, it's a fad that began a few years ago. In fact, it started to come into our churches behind that phrase of empower yourself. No, God doesn't give you power. You empower yourself. If you're lost, then find yourself. There are seminars that say how to find yourself, and lost people go saying, I want to find myself, and they pay to find themselves. If you're stressed out, then you have to take care of yourself. If you have a job interview, you have to believe in yourself before you present yourself at the interview. In fact, if you're going to get a tattoo, make sure that that tattoo expresses who you are. A mother-in-law, a snake, I don't know. Anyway, everyone will know. That's just an example. Poor snake. I always pick on the snake, right? If you want God to use you, then empower yourself. There are conferences like this. Empower yourself. But what if our internal being is a disaster? When you know yourself, you say, well, I'm a disaster deep down inside. Well, when that happens, what do? We try to fake it. We try to mask it. We cover up what we truly are. We don't allow ourselves to be known, and we show an edited version of our exterior. And that's why many people take identity in what they do. And we say, I'm a doctor. What are you? I am a pastor. And that's not enough for some. Some say, I'm an apostle. Others say, I'm an engineer. The first question that reporters tend to ask me always, they say, wait, so you're a pastor? Because after I give my answer, it's not simply a punctual question that comes from their curiosity. The question, are you a pastor? Are you a pastor, they ask. After my answer, my profession, my calling, my job, that supposedly gives me identity to them. In the best of cases, it validates me. In the worst cases, it discredits me. Oh, a pastor like those that say, oh, stop suffering. Or others say, oh, a pastor. I know a pastor who's a great friend of mine. People tend to put us in a box to try and define us. And I tend to answer, no, I'm not a pastor. I'm Dante Miguel. What I do doesn't define me. I also act. I'm a TV host. I draw. I write. I speak publicly. These are all temporary assignments. Some last year, some don't. But when I decide to do what I'm doing, I'm still going to be myself. And when I leave here and you find me on the street and you ask, well, what are you now? Oh, I'm nothing. No, I'm just no longer acting as a pastor at that point. But that's what we do. It's not who we are. In fact, this is so misunderstood. We ask children, what are you going to be? What are you going to be when you're older? As if their job defined their soul, their inner being. We should ask what they're going to do. What are you going to do when you're older? Instead of asking, what are you going to be? We're asking, what's going to be your identity? And poor kid, if they can't be a doctor, they'll become frustrated because they were told that being a doctor, having a diploma on the wall would assign them identity. So when you take identity in what you do, and then it suddenly collapses, that's when we begin to drown, when we begin to sink. There's nothing worse than a person saying, I am undocumented. No, you're not that. Maybe for this time, maybe for this season in life, or for your whole life, maybe you're not going to have your legal documents. But that doesn't make you an illegal. You're not a divorcee. No, you're somebody that went through divorce. You don't take identity in a marriage that failed. You don't say, oh, I'm an orphan. No, you're not an orphan. You're somebody that suffered because you lost your parents, but that's not your identity. That's why I insist with the idea. How can we assume to empower ourselves, or our internal being, the internal me, when that is what's drowning or sinking? We can't get our legal papers in order. We get fired from our jobs. We can't find a job in what we know how to do or in our profession. Our family or our marriage fails. When your identity is based on these external things and that collapses, then what are we going to take identity in? Let me tell you a story that made my blood cold. At the end of 2013 in Florida, an entire family suddenly lost their lives when, out of nowhere, without an earthquake, the foundations of their home collapsed and a huge hole appeared, and it swallowed the whole home with the family inside. They were asleep. And experts later explained that in certain areas of Florida, limestone is beneath the dirt, the surface, and it's being dissolved slowly by acid rain. Greetings to all those that live in Florida. Don't be afraid. It happened in 2013. It's believed to be an isolated case, but when that rock is dissolved and eaten away, the weight of the home produces a collapse that the foundations can no longer sustain. And psychologists speak about something very similar that happens in human life, and they call it the syndrome of drowning. And this phenomenon tends to come by being fired from your job, or a traumatic divorce, or the death of a loved one, or even a simple move from one home to another or one country to another. When we're under a very deep stress, sometimes we feel as if the earth beneath us is sinking, because we had taken identity in that. The place we grew up, the home we were able to buy, the partner we were able to find. But when our foundations are the empowerment of that internal being, your profession, your home, your family, your partner, money, your kids, even serving God, and if suddenly that collapses, as it did during the pandemic, many took identity in what they did for God. Oh, I go to church because I serve. Suddenly, 3 boogers in the air made the government say, from here on out, nobody goes out and churches are closed. Some continued worshiping at home or reading their Bibles at home because they didn't take God away from them. What they took away from us from some time was the ability to congregate. They didn't take God from us. So those that had their identity in what they did and not who they were for God or to God, they became depressed because literally the ground beneath them sunk. When the ground beneath us collapses and we're left in a hole of depression, that happens all the time. James 1:8 uses a magnificent phrase to define this condition. He says, a double-minded man is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do. A soul with no anchoring. James says that a soul with no foundation is like a wave in the ocean pushed by the wind, taken one direction and in another. Depends on someone else's approval. If they're disapproved of, then they become depressed. If things go well financially, then they're exorbitant and happy. If things go wrong, they want to kill themselves. James says it's like the waves in an ocean. It comes and it goes. No foundation. If you have a good memory, you might remember that I once shared while we were at the cathedral. When I was younger, I went with a group of friends. We were all adolescents. We went to an old amusement park in Buenos Aires that no longer exists. It was called Ito Park. And one of the attractions was a mechanical bull. The ones you have to get on and try and hold on for dear life to not be thrown off of it. I don't know what I was thinking when I assumed that I could try and tame the bull, right? When you're an adolescent, you're always trying to impress your friends. And especially at that age, us men become more idiots, especially if there are girls in the group. And when there are girls in the group, you become more foolish. And I should say that I never took any rodeo classes. I never went to a farm. I was never close to a bull. But that day I wanted to be the hero. So I offered myself as a volunteer to try and tame the mechanical bull. And when I went up to the machine, amongst the cheering and the clapping from my friends, the person that controlled the bull warned me and said, there are 12 levels of difficulty on this bull. We'll see what level you can reach. I think he saw me so scrawny and fragile that while he helped me get on, he almost explained it paternally. I'll never forget it again. He said, hey man, the secret is always to stay in the middle. And the only way of doing it is for you to sit loosely. I know it sounds crazy. People always try to cling on strongly. Don't do that. Try and be flexible so that it doesn't throw you off. And for you not to be thrown off, you have to follow the bull's movements. The looser you are, the longer you'll remain. You have to move your center of gravity the way the bull does. Obviously, like any adolescent, I didn't listen to a single word he said to me. I was saying dumb jokes with my classmates so that they could laugh. And as soon as the bull began to move, my instinct was to do what we all do. Cling on with all my strength. Hug the animal's neck and squeeze my legs. But then I had a revelation. I remembered something that the instructor had said. And immediately I said, you know what, no, let me relax. All the girls were looking. I said, you know what, I have to relax. And I followed the bull's movements that never stopped bucking. And incredibly, to my surprise and to your surprise, you unbelievers, I was able to withstand the 2 minutes of the bull's rage. It didn't throw me off, and when it stopped, I got off. I was very proud. My chest was puffed out. I looked at the man and I said, hey, what do you say? I must be one of the greats that was able to tame the bull. And the instructor smiled and said, this is the level for children under the age of 7. That was level 1. And I said, hey, don't say it so loud. Say it a little quieter. But he said it loud. It was level 1. And all my friends erupted in laughter, obviously. Since my pride was so hurt, I said that I wouldn't get off the bull until level 12, because I had already figured it out, apparently, right? I found the trick. So he said, all right, let's go to level 2. I said, no, don't stop until 12. 2 seconds into level 2, the bull threw me so far that there are still people looking for me, according to the legend. To say it in a poetic way, my butt was in the air against the fence of the attraction. Sometimes in life we experience level 1. Level 1 is when life doesn't have big complications. You go through life with a minor amount of problems. Level 1 is the week after the honeymoon, when our biggest worry is trying to find where to put away the 3 blenders that we got for the wedding, or what frame we want over the dining table, or we have to decide where we're going on vacation this next summer. There are moments in life where life goes through this low tide. But generally speaking, life doesn't remain in level 1. Things tend to get complicated. Maybe one day we discover that we have an anxiety disorder being so young. We don't even know why we can't sleep well, and we wake up more tired than when we went to bed. An addiction that had hibernated within us for 20 years suddenly wakes up and puts our job at risk, our profession, our family at risk. Suddenly our faith is filled with doubt. Our friends betray us. Our health becomes uncertain. Our economy becomes fragile, and we no longer have enough to pay the basics. And if our soul doesn't have a good foundation, as soon as life begins to buck, the bull will throw us off. It doesn't matter how hard we try to cling on, how much we try and follow the bull's movement. No, the bull is going to throw us off, and we're going to be left with our butt in the air, crashing into the fence. If there's no foundation, if there's no anchoring, we're going to be thrown off. Hebrews 6:17 says, God also bound himself with an oath. And the writer of the Hebrews says, so that those who receive the promise could be perfectly sure that he would never change his mind. When a ship does an anchoring maneuver, it means that it's immobilizing the ship, a boat. This anchoring is done by throwing the anchor to the ocean floor so that the ship doesn't move. If the ship or the boat is docked, it can put up with any inclement weather or any ferocious storm. It's anchored. And the anchoring is also the great nautical enigma, because this was written for 2 types of people, of anchoring your soul. The first crowd was composed by people that were 10 centimeters away from surrendering, the way many people might be feeling today, here and at home. And in this case, because of religious persecution, many of these Hebrews had lost family members, friends, businesses, jobs, just because they followed Jesus. They were in pain, anguished, broken. They were suffering economic, financial, emotional, and spiritual. And they were thinking what we sometimes think. I can't do this anymore. It's all over. This is too hard. This is too painful. I can't deal with this anymore. I've lost friends. I've lost loved ones. So the writer of the Hebrews says, don't give up on Jesus. He is your anchor. The second group were those that wanted to add Jesus to their conglomerate of spiritual doctrines. They wanted to believe in Jesus, but they also loved the law. They had almost like a hybrid spirituality where they tried to combine their faith in Jesus and their healthy doctrine. But the writer says, no, the only anchor you need is Christ. Christ is sufficient. You don't need anything else. And that's why the writer utilizes this maritime ingenuity. The author used the image of a boat and an anchor, or a ship and an anchor, to remind these followers of Jesus that when they felt overwhelmed, they needed to anchor themselves to Jesus, because Jesus was sufficient. They needed to anchor their souls to Jesus. Didn't matter what happened, the confusion, the uproar, the racket, the movement of the bull, and the writer painted a beautiful picture of stability and certainty. He didn't say this might work, it might not work. No, he said it's certain and firm. Hope wasn't a religious system or commandments. No, it was Christ. Jesus was the eternal anchor for their soul. He said, anchor your souls to Jesus. And as the centuries go by, we had to be reminded of the same thing. In 2024 years later, we haven't changed much. We're still needing an anchor to not have to suffer that syndrome of sinking when we don't understand why we're sad. If only depression could be explained easily. Those that have never suffered depression or deep sadness tend to criticize those that suffer it. And you say, how can it be? You have marvelous children. Look at the home you have. Really? What are you complaining about? What are you depressed about? Sometimes depression doesn't resist analysis. I don't want to necessarily say that it's a demon. No, sometimes they're just chemicals that mix in the brain, to say it in a simple way. And these chemicals create changes in our mood. We don't understand why we're sad. Sometimes in the worst cases, people can't even get out of bed. They can't get out from under the covers. And in the best of cases, there are people that get up, they try and drink a bit of coffee, go to work, but they're captivated by such sadness that they feel they can't breathe. And that doesn't have to do with a demon, necessarily speaking. Obviously, that doesn't come from God, but that doesn't mean that they're estranged. Sometimes you feel like your soul just feels anxiety that you're not holding onto something firm. So the question is, what is our anchor? Or in more simple terms, what or who are we anchored to in the moments when we feel sad? Or do we feel sad because we're not anchored to anything? What do we run to when we need an escape? This isn't something that we should answer out loud to not get into problems, but when you say, I need an escape, where? Maybe those that have resources say, let me go to a cabin hidden in the mountains of who knows where. Those that can't have that luxury because of a lack of time or money, they say, what do I know? Let me just have a Netflix binge right now. Others say, I'll eat everything in this neighborhood and city. I'm going to eat a whole tub of ice cream. Others say, sex, pornography. Pornography helps me escape for a moment. It helps me go to a virtual reality and it makes me feel good. It's an escape. Others say sex. No, not pornography, but literal sex. Others say alcohol, tequila. When I need an escape, I need to smoke something and drink something and forget about the world. That's what the anchor is. That's how serious it is. Others say, well, my anchor, I don't need that escape. My anchor, my tranquility, depends on me being free from debts. Thank God my home is paid off. And I have a retirement plan, and I have money in the bank, and I'm ready to grow old. So, that soul's anchors is preparation and employment, intelligence, money, resources. I'm in favor of strategic planning for retirement and financial freedom. But let's be sincere. The plan, whatever the plan is, will always have holes in it. If only life were predictable. Life is never clean or controlled or organized. Life is not level 1 on the bull for children under 7. No, life becomes complicated. Life isn't predictable. This is who I'll be, and at this age I'll graduate, and then I'll get married at this age, and then I want my husband to be like this. I don't want him to be bald or have a big belly. No, it's not going to happen. What do I know? Life changes the script on us continually. As much as we save up, maybe we're surprised by an illness or a disease that our health insurance won't or can't cover, and we're left with nothing. How many people have been through that? 4 or 5 years of being in and out of the hospital dilapidates all the money you had saved up for your children's university. If we're anchored to money, then we're going to be tied to the whims and cravings of the economy and politicians, or even inflation. So things that have no soul can't help us people, and we do have souls. Your cell phone can't be your escape when you're sad. You say, I'm sad, but I have my phone. It'll be an escape, but it's not an anchor. Your cell phone can't hold up your soul, even if it has an ultra high resolution screen and a telephoto lens. No. The cell phone can't help us because it doesn't have a soul. Our home doesn't have a soul. Our job doesn't have a soul. Our social position has no soul. Serving God, our service to God doesn't have a soul. It's just service to God. But by definition, these things don't have the intrinsic capacity to assist us emotionally or spiritually. That's why we become depressed. Others might say, well, I can't anchor myself to things. I'm not so foolish, but my anchor is my husband. He's the one that contains me. He's the man that I run to, his shoulder. I lay on his chest when I'm depressed. And the guy might say, well, no. My anchor is my woman. I lay on her chest as well. It's more fun when she lays on his chest, right? But no, I'm completely in love, and we can conquer the world together, and our love goes beyond all borders. Others say, no, my anchor is my family. How many women say, my anchor are my grandchildren? If I know my family is fine, I will never sink. And these people literally depend on their children and their grandchildren. And when they can't gather their family, when those grandchildren eventually have their own lives and their own interests, they fall in love, they find their partners, they're not going to go visit grandma as often as they did when they were 8. They go from time to time. And if that poor woman was anchored to her children or grandchildren, she'll begin to feel alone, and then she'll fall into depression. Others anchor themselves to their friends. While I have him or while I have her, I'm never going to feel alone because we have such good times together as friends. But every friend also has their times. Now, those that anchor themselves to people, let's agree, different to those that anchor themselves to things. People that anchor themselves to other people are definitely one level above those that anchor themselves to property or a car or a cell phone. But anchoring yourself to a person also has holes, because that person that we're counting on also has a soul just as fragile as ours, or as fragmented as ours. We can't say, they're going to be my anchor, because they also have an anchor, and sometimes they'll feel like sinking as well. I once heard a story of a marriage that didn't get along too well, because he always came from the street in a bad mood, and she always had a bad mood, so they decided to implement a system of self-help, and she said, look, when you're having a bad day, I want you to put your hat backwards. And when I see you come in with your hat backwards, I'm going to prepare your slippers. I'm going to prepare your favorite food. I won't speak to you. I won't complain about the house. I won't talk about my mom. That day, I'm going to treat you like a prince because your backwards hat is telling me I've had a terrible day. And when I have a bad day, I'm going to put on my apron backwards. So when you come in and you see me with my apron backwards, don't go against me. Don't throw things. Please hang the towels. Make sure the bathroom's clean. Help me wash the dishes. And that's how they lived for many years. He would come in with the backwards hat, and she was sweet. He would open the door, and she had a backwards apron, and he was a gentleman. Until one day he came in with this backwards hat, and she had her apron backwards. That's what it is to anchor yourself to a soul. To pretend that the person's always going to be fine because they're my anchor. No. None of us can function as an anchor. How many people go into marriage assuming that their partner, that their spouse is going to be the fountain of stability? No, I want to live my parents' home, and so that we can have our own experience and our own world and our own home. And they think that their spouse is going to give them what they don't have now that they're single. And as I said a few Sundays ago, they end up wounded, frustrated, hurt, because they each disappoint each other. Your partner becomes a duel from the Wild West where nobody wants to put their gun down first. Oh, you don't give me what I need. Yeah, but you don't give me what I need either. And as I once said, it's not a lack of love, it's just a question of expectations that are impossible to fulfill. It's the belief that our soul is going to find happiness, satisfaction, security by anchoring itself to another human soul. No, it won't happen. We tie ourselves to someone else and we both end up drowning because of the storms in life. The problem is we can't save one another. How many churches end up frustrated because the pastor failed? And I always ask, why the heck did they anchor themselves to the pastor? The pastor is someone that guides, just a tour guide, a museum guide, that says, this is the exposition. And he shows us the Monet, the Van Gogh, the Rembrandt. We're just guides. But when you try to be the Messiah, learn from my example, learn from my family, learn from my character, and then you fail, people get frustrated because they say, oh, I trusted so much in this pastor. Well, let me tell you now, don't trust in me. I'm going to drown just like you guys. Let's trust in God, our anchor, our lives. That's how it is. I don't want someone to say tomorrow, oh, he failed me because I was expecting. No. Your expectations are your own problem. I can't be in charge of other people's expectations of me. When people say, learn from me, I never do that because I understand that if you anchor yourself to me, we're going to drown because I am a human being. So what's the solution? Let's agree that we need to anchor ourselves to someone with the soul. Let's discard things, right? We need that soul to look like ours, a soul that knows our pain, that knows what it means to be depressed, sad to the point of death. But at the same time, we need it to be a soul that's profoundly different, a soul with no defects, a soul that will not sink. And that's the only soul that can fix us because it doesn't have to fix itself. That's where Jesus comes in. Someone that understands what we're going through. Someone that lived on this planet for 33 years. And Jesus is the firm anchor of our soul that will not discriminate us when we say, we're sad, or I don't even feel like sending my kids to school today. I'm sad and I don't feel like showering today. Let's not listen to the preachers that tell us, rebuke that spirit, proclaim victory. Sometimes you don't feel like showering. I hope there's no one here today that went through that this morning. Out of respect for your neighbor. The only one that understands this is Jesus. Sometimes you don't even feel like praying. It's a sigh. And you wait for the Holy Spirit to be there when you have no words. You hope that the Spirit can intercede for you and say, Father, he can't even speak today. The Lord loves us when we're strong and when we're weak. He loves us when we have energy and when we don't. Now, to be honest, I wish the writer of the Hebrews, I wish he would have used a different word, not anchor. I wish he could have said, Jesus is the helicopter of the soul. Because if I were in a storm, I would prefer to have a helicopter before having an anchor. Because the anchor implies that I'm going to stay exactly where I am. The anchor is, I have to anchor myself and put up with it, resist. Anchoring is, let me throw my anchor overboard and stay here in life. It implies staying in the storm. Sometimes I'll have to close my eyes, get soaked, and wait for it to pass. The only guarantee of the anchor is that I'm not going to sink. But the storm, I'm still going to have to go through it. So the example is surgical. He said anchor, not helicopter. If I'm anchored, I'm going to have to remain there until it passes. I'm not going to be able to move until the storm comes to pass. But we all like to escape the storm, not go through it with an anchor. I would love a helicopter with a few soldiers from the Marines, well trained, that can lift me up. They have their winch and they can fly me out of that reality. I wish there was a celestial helicopter with a man that looks like The Rock or Denzel Washington or Tom Cruise saying, young man, hold on tight. I swear to you by the heavens that I'll get you out of this one. I would pay for that. Hold on. Yes, I'm here. All right, let's go. We're going to fly, my friend. Yes, Tom. I would love it. Because that's how we pray. Get me out of here, Father. Elevate me, God. Transport me. Teleport me, God. How many times have we asked the Lord, oh, God, the rapture would be such a great thing right now on the 1st of this month. We've all prayed, Lord, get me out of this. I don't know what I was thinking when I got into it. Can you get me out of it? Can you help me? Can you send a ladder so that I can escape this? I don't want to be in this hospital anymore. I don't want this insulin anymore. I don't want any more vaccines. I don't want any more dialysis. I don't want this family anymore. I don't want fights. I don't want any more debates or arguments. Can you teleport me? And Jesus answers, I don't plan on ejecting you or evacuating you. Have you heard spies saying, I need to be ejected now? And then somebody comes and rescues them? No, Jesus says, my only promise is that I'll be your anchor throughout the storm. I will be your anchor. I will hold you up. There's no evacuation. There's no eject button. But we want somebody to remove us from the storm. But God says, no. The Lord says, no, I'm not going to remove you. I'm going to be your stability in the storm. That's what we're made of, people. Of remaining serene, calm in the midst of the storm. Having resilience, being able to put up with the difficult moments. That's what men and women are made of. Our children should become men and women by putting up with the storm with what they learned from life, and that's how their character is forged. But how many parents are helicopter parents? That the 35-year-old boy says, Dad, I can't pay my rent. Oh, let me send you some money, son. And they get them out of it. And they're flying, hanging onto the ladder coming out of the helicopter. Mom, I'm not getting along with my wife. Can I go sleep at your house? Oh, yes, son, come on. I'm going to make you your favorite soup. That woman never loved you. And that's it. Helicopter moms. The Lord doesn't do that. He says, no, we're going to go through this storm together. I'm not going to evacuate you or eject you because you're never going to learn anything. I can't just evacuate you from any problem. I can't eject you from all your hard situations in life. Life isn't level 1. Life has many levels where the bull is always going to buck, and you have to hold on. You have to put up with it, tolerate. When someone isn't anchored to Jesus, even as a minister, I always say, oh, I need to take 4 sabbaticals and 4 vacations. Even ministers say this. Why? Because their anchor is in Hawaii or in Cancun. Their anchor is in, oh, I need to rest. But if their anchor is in Christ, then you have your normal vacations. We can't be super, ultra, hyper, extra stressed out saying, I want to die. I can't breathe. Well then, you don't have an anchor. The Gospels register a few incidents that had to do with Jesus, his disciples, and boats trapped in storms. One of those stories is found in Matthew 3:14, where he tells them, the disciples, to cross the sea, and he'll meet them on the other side. But something starts to go wrong. The bull starts to buck. The night wasn't level 1. It advanced to almost level 10. Night falls, the winds blow strongly, they can't make it anywhere, the waves are monstrous. Even these expert fishermen begin to panic. And at that point, what do these people want? Those that are on the boat, what do they want? They want a helicopter, obviously. What else would they want? Help us to go through the storm. No, they want a helicopter. Well, maybe they didn't think exactly in a helicopter because many millennium would pass before humanity could discover how to fly. But they wanted to be evacuated. They wanted to be teleported. They wanted to be on the other side of that sea now. They wanted that nightmare to finish now. So Jesus appears walking towards them on the water. This is the same Jesus that could calm the sea and the winds now, but he didn't. he walks on the waves. Instead of calming the storm, he almost kills them out of fear because they think that he's a ghost. And Jesus says, "Hey, everyone, calm down, it's me." It's like 3 in the morning, and these guys are cold, wet, they haven't slept, and Jesus appears calmly walking on the waves. Don't you think Jesus has a good sense of humor? Peter says, "If it's you, then command me to walk towards you." I don't know what the heck Peter's talking about or thinking when he enlists himself as a volunteer like Dante on that mechanical bull. And if it wasn't Jesus? And if he got off the boat and it wasn't Jesus, what if it was a ghost? It would all end terribly. So Jesus says, "Come, come, come, big mouth." And everyone says that Peter walked upon the water, but that's not completely precise. Peter walked on the waves. That's another level. And I say, "Jesus, why did you make him walk on the waves?" It's already impressive enough to have him walk on the water calmly like Jim Carrey in Evan Almighty. Why do you have to make it more difficult by making it during a storm? He walked on waves. You have to give credit to Peter because Peter took a few steps. And then the winds begin to blow more strongly and he begins to sink. This makes me remember some episodes of the coyote, the cartoon coyote. The coyote, not the smuggler that you're still paying off. No, I'm talking about the coyote in the cartoons. That would always chase after the roadrunner, remember? Beep, 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 beep. And the episode was always like this. The roadrunner would brake and stop, and the coyote would continue running and running and running. He would run in the air, and he wouldn't fall until what? Until he looked down and realized. And then he would fall, remember? Remember? He would run off a cliff, he would look down, he would look at the camera, and he would fall. So I can imagine Peter exactly like the coyote. He's walking on the water, and suddenly he looks at the wind, he sees everything, he looks at the camera, and he says, "Later," and he falls. And Jesus extends his hand and saves him, and he asks, "Peter, why did you doubt? Why such little faith?" If I were Peter, I would say, "I'm sorry? Are you speaking to me seriously right now? Really? Because as far as I know, I'm the only guy that got off that boat. You want to see little faith? Those guys on the boat have little faith." You know what, Lord? I would have loved it if you could just turn off the machine of the wind. Sometimes we read these stories and we make them mystical and Renaissance. I'm sure that Peter didn't feel like those figures that we see in the basilicas walking on the water. You know, in the basilica, Peter's walking on the water like a gazelle, and Jesus is extending his hand, and Peter's like this. It's a beautiful, diaphanous figure, like a painting from the Renaissance. No, he was terrified, scared, soaked, human. And Jesus asks, "Why did you doubt, you dummy? Why?" If we're being honest, we've all had moments like this. We read scripture that encourages us to believe in God, and they sound great on paper when we repeat them even. But when you look around you, you're overwhelmed. We say, "Lord, what do you mean, why am I doubting? Have you seen the winds? Lord, have you seen the waves? What do you mean, why am I doubting? You were there when the doctor gave me the diagnosis. You saw the news. You watch the same channel I do. Have you realized who our president is? You've seen our president give speeches, right? And you're asking me why I doubt? In other countries, they say, "You see what hairstyle my president has, and you're asking why I doubt?" Lord, you're asking why I doubt. Have you ever met my mother-in-law? Yes, Lord, I'm drowning. I'm sinking. Now, Jesus is saying something with the question. Of course, he's always saying something when he's asking a question. Jesus' questions are absolutely rhetorical. Don't doubt it. They're affirmations disguised as questions to help us reflect. The way the teachers in our infancy used to ask. They would ask us questions to make us think. Like the person that's eating a soup and asks the waiter, "Hey, Mr. Waiter, can you please try my soup?" And the waiter says, No. If it's not good, we can change it. Please just try it. Sir, well, if it's cold, we can swap it out. And the waiter says, No, we can swap it out if you don't like it. And so the diner asks again, "Can you try my soup?" And the waiter says, "Sure." And he tries to do so. And he says, "Well, there's no spoon." Ah, there you go. Those are Jesus' questions. When we answer him, we realize the obvious. Jesus wants to know what Peter's reasons are to doubt. He wants to remind him that he's there with him. "I'm your anchor, I'm your rock, I'm taking care of you. I'm your God in the midst of the storm." That's marvelous. So in the midst of our waves, God asks us the same questions. Why did you doubt? He's not asking us to condemn us or to make fun of us, but it's a way to say, you have no reason to doubt. Jesus is with you. Now let's agree something in our favor. The physical, tangible, visible Jesus was right in front of Peter. But even then, he had difficulties to keep his eyes fixed on Jesus because the waves were big. But we don't have the luxury of seeing Jesus physically. When you got a divorce, Jesus didn't appear with his tunic and his sandals, saying, "Hey, don't worry. Let me ride in your car and I'll tell you what your new normal will look like. I'll explain it all." Or when they gave you a medical diagnosis, Jesus didn't stand there next to you for you to see him saying, "No, don't worry, it's just a diagnosis." No, we're asked to believe in a Jesus that we can't see, right? Isn't that right? We have to trust in a Jesus that we haven't seen with these eyes. That's the matter of the anchors. This is the point of the message. This is what I wanted to get to. An anchor does its best job when you can't see it. If you look over the boat, if you look over the rail and you see the anchor floating, then you're done for. The anchor is submerged through the depths of the ocean and becomes fixed on the ocean floor. And on the surface, we may be going back and forth because of the storm. Can you see Jesus on the boat? No, you see winds, you see the storm, you see water, you see the bull bucking. But beneath the surface, there's an anchor. So the Lord asks us, if you're anchored to me, even if you don't see me, why are you doubting? If you anchored the boat, you already threw the anchor over, the job is done, then I'm going to take care of your life here and in eternity. Be calm. You're anchored. Observe that Jesus asks Peter this question while Peter's still trying to walk on the water or splashing. He's still not on the boat. Jesus isn't being cruel with Peter. Peter needed to believe that Jesus was so trustworthy in the storm, like in the calm. So let's see. It's easy to have faith when we're safe on the boat, when the winds are gone, when the stars come out, and the bull is back to level 1. But can we trust in Jesus in the middle of the storm? Because that's where we need it the most, not before. Anyone can trust in God when things are going well. So to conclude the story, let me point to something else. The Apostle John registers the same story, but he mentions an interesting detail that isn't in the other gospel. John 6:21 says that when Jesus got to the boat, they immediately arrived at their destination. That's Jesus' personality. In one moment, we're in the middle of a storm, terrified, confused, soaked, alone. Suddenly, some way, we get to where we're supposed to get to. And we almost don't even realize how we got there. Try to remember. Was there a time, not too long ago, when we thought we wouldn't accomplish it? You've all gone through that situation, saying, I'm not going to make it. Or when you assumed that the storm and the waves would cover you. But we remained. I don't know how, but God helped us get past it. And then people come up to us and they say, oh, you have such favor. Oh, you're so lucky. Oh, I want God to bless me the way he blesses you. They always tell me, Dante, you do so well in everything. But I feel like saying, you don't have a damn idea of all the storms I've had to go through. People have no clue when they say, oh, I want the same thing you have. They have no clue. The point isn't just crossing the lake. The point is understanding that we won't be evacuated, that we won't go down the easy road of being evacuated. We have to learn to trust that we're anchored in Jesus. We've had a gospel of evacuation for years. I was born in the gospel of evacuation. The only preachings on Sunday were, Christ is coming soon. We're almost leaving. We're almost out of here. The world's going to get worse, but Christ is coming, and he's going to lift us into the clouds. We'll be transformed. Some will be left here, others will be taken. Those were the only preachings. And one day, I referred to these messages, and I said on TV, this produced a castrated generation with no dignity. Woo. And people began to say, Dante doesn't believe in the rapture. No, what I don't believe in is in preaching a sermon of evacuation, making the church a city like a bunker, like moles hiding underground. No, we have to resist. I share the same government as my compatriots wherever I live. It's just that my compatriots are anguished by inflation, but I am trusting that even though I share the same government, my anchor isn't the government. My anchor is Jesus. My anchor is the Lord. That's the difference. We lived the same pandemic that the rest of the world did. It was craziness to believe that Christians wouldn't get sick and die, but they did. They died. But while some that didn't have Christ were afraid of where they would go when they would die, we were not afraid because our anchor was never the vaccine, but Jesus. What's the worst thing that could happen to us? Well, we die because of COVID. Yeah, but then we go to be with the Lord. That's our anchor. Maybe we have to spend a season in the hospital, or we have a season of skinny cows in our finances. You have to go through that sometimes. It's not that we've done something wrong, or that we stopped tithing, or that we're paying because we never sowed. No, sometimes you have to go through a time where God says, this season will teach you how to be like a crane. You stand on one leg on a stone until the waters go down. That is a good thing for our children, because if they get a panic attack because there's no Wi-Fi or because we can't pay for Netflix, well, then you're going to have a great problem as an adult, my son or daughter. There aren't any helicopters that are going to come and pay for your things when you can't pay for them tomorrow. At one point, you're going to have to find out how to pay for those diapers. We'll have to go through that, and that doesn't make you less spiritual. That doesn't make you less of a child of God. Sometimes a parenthesis comes in our ministry where you feel that you're not doing anything useful for God. But I have gifts, but God isn't using me. Like a friend said, why doesn't God take advantage of me? And God says, no. Now there's a parenthesis, because I want you to be, not do. I want to see how you relate to me when you don't do things, just when you are. Why does all that happen in life? Well, to know who we're anchored to. We want someone that can remove us from the storm, but Jesus wants to be our stability in the storm. And there are moments where you'll have to dance with the uglier one. There are moments where you have to dance the waltz with today's music and let it pass. Each day has enough trouble of its own. There are days that aren't nice, but you have to go through them. And you don't have to be so mystical and think, why is this happening to me? If I can, I try and travel. I say this with no problems. I try and travel in business because I like it, because I'm older. I like to have more room for my legs. It's more tiring to travel in economy. Sometimes I say there's no seats in business. And the Lord says, all right, let's see. Is your mood determined by how much space you have on the plane, or am I still your anchor? So I smile, I get my little plastic cup, my little knife that wouldn't kill a bunny, and I give thanks because that's what I have today. If I can go to a nice hotel, I go to a nice hotel. And when there are no nice hotels, but there's just a bed and a hot shower, I give thanks to God. I'm not going to be humble and say I prefer the more poor hotels. No, I like the nice ones, but when I can't because they don't exist or logistics or whatever it is, the Lord says, is your joy regulated by where you sleep or by the anchor of your soul? I'm continually tested in these things. Sometimes I don't feel like speaking to anyone and I say, Lord, all I want to do now is sleep. And an unbeliever sits next to me. Or somebody comes and says, oh, can I get a video? Please, please, for my aunt. And let me tell you about my testimony. And I don't want to hear a testimony. I say, Lord, take them with you. Please, take them now. Reward them for their testimony with the crown. And the Lord says, is your joy regulated by the loneliness you asked me for? Or are you still willing to be anchored to me? So, I can't promise you that the winds will cease immediately in your life, that the waves will calm immediately, because I would just be scamming you. Come to the altar and reclaim your peace. I can't promise you that you'll get out of it now, but I can't give you my word of honor, because I base myself on Him, that you're going to remain alive, and you're going to get out of this storm alive. Much stronger, with a better character. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. You don't need more information than that, Marine. Doesn't matter how strong the winds blow. Don't give up. Don't give in. Don't surrender. Don't lay your arms down. Even if you have to cling onto the mast. Hold on to it until the storm passes. Anchor your boat to the bottom of the ocean. Resist and remember, the order is, you will not be evacuated. You will not be rescued. You won't be ejected. In fact, the Lord has seen your anchor, and He is saying that you need nothing more. You're anchored, you're going to survive, and you're going to get to the other side. That's a word of honor from our Lord. A grand applause to the King of Kings. Give a grand applause to the King of Kings, our anchor. Our support system in the storm. Hallelujah. Give a grand applause and say, Lord, you've spoken with me today. How the Lord loves you. How the Lord loves you, princess. Prince. How the Lord loves you. I would love for you to place your hand on your heart here and at home if you can. If you're in your living room, your kitchen, we're doing it here. First, receive Christ in your heart. Say, Lord, come into my life, forgive my sins. And secondly, say, Lord, I want you to reveal to me now that my anchor is at the bottom of the ocean. I want to anchor my boat from here on out, this day of May, so that when I get to the end of the year, or before that, or the end of the month, whatever it is, may I know that no one, nothing can sink me. No storm will be so strong that it'll capsize my boat. Anchor your boat, says the Lord. That's the nautical enigma of life. How will you do it? Just believe that He is your anchor. Even if my mother and father could leave me, the Lord will take me. Even though there is no product on the olive vines, even then I will rejoice. That makes you immortal, invincible. Until you can say like the apostle, "Oh death, where is thy victory? Oh death, where is thy sting?" Have you seen the superheroes from Marvel or DC? They always have a small weakness. They have a certain kryptonite that makes them weak. But we don't have any when our anchor is Jesus. And we say, what's the worst that can happen to me? Death? Then I would go be with Him. Illness? Well, then I would take advantage of that time to meditate. Lose my house? Well, then I'll just start again. have to rent or ask for a loan, if I can go to bed trusting in Him and wake up trusting in Him, it doesn't matter if my roof is my own or if I'm renting it. That makes you indestructible because there's no one that can regulate your emotional state. You're anchored in Jesus. And good things might come, bad things might come. Spring, summer, winter, fall. Nothing can separate you from the love of Christ. Not the depths, not what's high, what's low, not the present or what's to come. Nothing created, not here, beneath the earth, beneath the heaven. Nothing can separate you from the Lord's love. If only that were our axiom, our proverb, our motif. Put your hand on your heart firmly and say, Lord, I anchor my heart. I anchor the boat of my soul, of my being, in the depths of the ocean, the depths of the divine ocean, and I know that I will not be moved. Even if the winds come and the storms come, I will remain. I will remain on the foundation of my rock. My anchor is Jesus. I can be alone for a season. I can be loved for a season. I can have a season with no parents. A time in a life where I can live with just the right amount of money, but nothing will separate me from you, Lord, because I've learned to love in richness and in scarcity. And with everything I will rejoice. In prison, Paul said, during torture, during shipwrecks, I will continue trusting that Christ is the rock of my soul. Christ is my anchor, and we have an anchor for our soul, and His name is Jesus. Father, thank you for this time. If you can, lift your hand to heaven and say, Lord, look at these hands that raise now. From these fishermen, these people that are aboard life, and they trust in you. I bless your boat, your ship, commander. I bless those that are going out to the sea, and those that will go to the open ocean and fight with life. I bless those that will have to go through storms in their health, finances, or spirituality. Even those that will have to navigate with no desire to do so. Commander, continue aboard. Don't let your arms down. Don't surrender. Anchor your boat in Jesus Christ, and you will make it to the other side of the lake firmly. I bless you in the body, soul, and spirit. Amen and amen. God bless you. May He protect you, and may He make His face shine upon you. Bye, people. Firm like a bear claw. Bye. Until next Sunday.
Apareciste una noche de soledad, abandonado y perdido te reconocí. Tu voz diciéndome no temas, yo estoy aquí. El Padre me envió por ti y me curaste las heridas, me sanaste, mi Jesús. Todas mis cargas las dejaste allí en la cruz. Algo tan grande no lo puedo comprender. Oigo tu dulce voz diciéndome una y otra vez, oh, 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 eres bienvenido, eres amado una y otra vez, oh, 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 bienvenido a River, eres amado. Apareciste en una noche de soledad, abandonado y perdido te reconocí. Tu voz diciéndome no temas, yo estoy aquí. El Padre me envió por ti y me curaste las heridas, me sanaste, mi Jesús. Todas mis cargas